Hello, and thank you for attending. I'm Joe Cyril with STI. Today, we're going to start a series of webinars on cyber attack and IT failure. We have some talented people that will be making presentations today. We have Matt Ross, who is STI sales manager. He handles all of our MSP client accounts. And we have Greg Williams, our technical services manager, that handles all of our technicians that work with accounts for computer repair as well as cybersecurity. Everybody's been muted when they came in to the webinar. If you have any questions, we want to handle those at the end. So please enter your questions into the chat option within the webinar. And I'll be back to answer those questions at the end. And I'm going to introduce now Matt Ross, STI sales manager for MSP client accounts.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. We appreciate everybody's attendance today. So first, just to talk briefly for a moment as to what we're going to learn about in today's program. Talk a little bit briefly as to who we are at STI Computers, some of our strengths, give you a little bit of background about our history of what we know specifically in healthcare. I'm sure everyone receives either on their phone or through email notices of cyber attacks, what's been breached. We're going to talk a little bit more specifically about those risks, ransomware unique to the healthcare industry, data breaches, and what those impacts are financially, some of the costs, including disruptions to your group, your practice, your facility, and the importance of conducting what's called a cyber analysis or a risk assessment of report to get an idea as to where your practice or your business does lie, the benefits of partnering with a managed service provider and strengths in cybersecurity. And at the end, we'll talk about what you should be doing in terms of developing an action plan within your organization. So who we are briefly at STI. So we're a US founded, US based, all of our staff, all of our employees and management team residing within the United States, proudly the United States of America. Established in the 1980s as a software development company, and in 1996 further expanded our healthcare footprint into managed services. We've got currently over 400 customers, serving them regionally and nationally. We cover from the Northeast, from Maryland to Maine and all the tri-state areas, serving also our customers at a national level. The strengths of our organization are in our healthcare lineage. Not only do we come from an understanding and knowledge in software from practice management, we've had our own healthcare EHR software, including revenue cycle management. That's afforded us to provide endpoint solutions for organizations in our managed services division, utilizing softwares of Epic, Azalea Health, eClinical, just to name a few. Revenue cycle and billing agencies similarly utilize our services to provide network and security solutions, which, if we can provide those solutions to the healthcare segment, certainly allows us to provide services in our managed service and IT support of different industries beyond just healthcare alone. Well, why do I need cybersecurity within my organization? And quite frankly, healthcare is an easy target. And why? It's the reportability. The cyber criminals understand that if there is an attack within a healthcare segment, there are responsibilities that a medical practice, a hospital, has to do should there be some form of a security breach. So the cyber criminals realize that you can't just turn the cheek to this, you have to do something about it, and there's plenty of money to be made. The greatest weak point is IT, and secondly is the human error factor. No matter how good we are as humans, you can't not resolve the fact that we are the second largest component to a cybersecurity breach. Just since 2024, there's been a 400% increase in incidents related to healthcare alone, with losses exceeding over $200,000. And think about this, over half of all of the healthcare organizations last year experienced some form of intrusion, some form of an attack, with 12% astonishingly having over a $500,000 loss. And of those that were breached, you want to know how many recovered? 65% still are struggling to recover from some form of cyber attack. We all hear about, talk about artificial intelligence and how great it is. Well, the cyber criminals certainly understand the benefits of artificial intelligence, with 16% of the breaches involving some form of AI, whether it be a phishing episode or some kind of synthetic deepfake media creation. The problem with AI right now is its oversight. There's a lot of adoption, but there's not a lot of oversight to the advancements made in AI. And we'll continue to see these types of breaches, these types of attacks, unless something is put in place to try to prevent that. And while the cloud seems like such a great area of protection, quite honestly, what is the cloud? All the cloud is an extensive network of remote servers, and guess where that lives? On the internet. So 10 years ago, when the cloud became more prevalent, the types of attacks are related to misconfigurations were not that much of a threat. But today they are. And why are they? It's because of where they initially begin. And that is at the practice, at the medical facility level. Data that is in the cloud isn't breached directly in the cloud. It's compromising some form of device, tablet, PC at the level of a medical practice. So it is most critical to be having a fundamental understanding and control of where these cyber breaches actually take place. Let's talk a minute about what those costs of non-compliance are. Not talking about the penalties, but fines alone can exceed over $100,000 for companies. When you talk about the lawsuits, whether it be a class action suit, a direct customer, whether it be an insurance company, there's a tremendous cost involved just from a legal perspective. And talking about reputational damage, I know specifically of a multi-million-dollar healthcare management firm in New York. They maintain millions of patient records. Those were compromised, and due to that network issue, the IT breach alone virtually shut down the company within 60 days and the loss of all their customers due to trust. The customers needed different solutions. So the reputational damage in itself is absolutely significant in and above regulatory actions by Health and Human Services, state or other investigations by other agencies. The cost of downtime can't be undermined. And there lies, what about criminal prosecution? The prosecution from a criminal perspective is really determined based upon what it is that you're doing to help prevent that. In the healthcare, we know, we're all been familiar with, have heard ad nauseum HIPAA. But what we do at a security level from a standpoint of the prevention of a breach or a cyber attack and the cost associated really is based upon what you do within the healthcare leadership, what you do in the medical practice to help prevent that. And the costs associated from a penalty can be as focused either on your unknowing violation, you didn't have any understanding of that, to just blatant neglect from the standpoint of, I don't care, I'm not going to worry about it, although I've been known. And you can see here in front of us that the per violation, per patient cost at the level of a breach for HIPAA alone can be extremely devastating and certainly costly to the point of criminal prosecution should you make an election not to be doing anything within your organization. Well, let's talk for a second about, well, I utilize the cloud, I shouldn't be concerned, there's no real risk set to me. Well, even if you're hacked by a third party. So if you're utilizing that cloud service, you're still responsible in some capacity, especially if that risk, that breach came from you. And how does that happen? Well, if a breach occurs at the level of your network, you are not absolved from your responsibilities at a legal level to be responsible for protected information, regardless of where that is stored. Now, what notification requirements are responsible if even there is a breach at a level outside the four walls of your practice? That's really based upon the extensiveness of the breach, what information was compromised, whether it be financial data, whether it be PHI or passwords. Now, there may be some opportunities for you to, from a contractual standpoint, try to mitigate some of those breaches, at least the extent of them, by language within your agreements and your vendor contracts. It's something for consideration and certainly should be exploited, but it still does not remove you from the responsibilities that you have relating to protected information and from a cyber attack. So what do I do next? The most important thing that any practice can do is conduct a cyber security assessment as it relates to the network, to making sure that you are managing your facility up to the current federal requirements underneath HIPAA, as well as security rules. So it's not just a smart thing to do, but you're legally responsible for. And in fact, under the Health and Human Services Security Rule, if you provide care to patients and get paid for any state or federal program, you must comply. And what do those compliance requirements consist of? Well, for example, you need to be analyzing your security network, reviewing them, conducting assessments on your equipment, defining those protocols, managing these protocols, identifying which users are utilizing your equipment and the security associated with that. Are there software updates? Defining and logging those software updates. Is your organization using dual authentication? Are you testing your network? What about your disaster recovery plans? And the list goes on and on. These are HHS security rule requirements. And by preparing yourselves to take actions to protect that patient information and conducting a security assessment and a corresponding report, you'll be able to help protect yourself if or when an attack should occur. Now, regardless of whether you conduct an assessment, whether you have a managed service provider help you, it seems lately that it's going to be more of a matter of time than not, and doing nothing is not a good defendable position to be in. And certainly, you don't want to be negligent in ignoring any of your cybersecurity requirements. Now, best fit is I'd like to introduce to you Greg Williams, who is our technical services manager here at STI, who can share more profound knowledge of what cybersecurity assessments are and why they're so important to your business. So Greg, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Matt, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending. Matt, thank you for walking us through the critical importance of cybersecurity protections. I wanted to just say a couple of things about the assessment that Matt was referencing. And as Matt has outlined, having a focus on cybersecurity is a critical aspect of your overall technology and security posture. Let me start by saying a couple of things about the assessment that we provide. And I'll start with this. Cyber criminals only have to get it right once. As a company, as an organization, you need to get it right every time. And companies need to try everything from a standards and best practices perspective to ensure that they are protecting the business, their customers, their patients, etc. So the bar is high. And as someone who has recently, in the past few years, been a part of one of the largest cyber attacks and ransomware attacks I can assure you, as Matt said, it's not a matter of if, but more a matter of when, and therefore implementing the protections that's recommended is what's best for all companies. Excuse me. As part of our cybersecurity assessment, we'll interview your team, we'll identify key aspects of your infrastructure, of your security, of your software environment. We'll look at all of your inventory. We'll look at your configurations to determine whether or not they meet best practices, and we'll make recommendations. In the report that was mentioned earlier, we'll come out of that with recommendations for changes if changes are required. We'll also obviously identify where there are strong areas from a protection perspective. Excuse me. And in addition to the cybersecurity assessment, one of the things that we at STI offer is an MSP service. And as an MSP provider, you know, we remotely monitor and manage your IT infrastructure. And we provide services focused on ensuring the health and stability of your technology areas. We provide remote help desks and tech services focused on preventing downtime and and delivering on your technology needs. And so, you know, our key things is monitor, manage, and prevent. And then there's a list of items. One, you know, infrastructure management around servers and network and routers are really important in our space, and we protect and manage a lot of those devices. We have a cybersecurity solution that's focused on threat detection and endpoint detection and response when there are issues. So as an example, if there are issues identified from our monitoring, we'll quarantine a device. We'll ensure that device doesn't have access to the rest of your environment until we can identify the issue that's been pointed out on that device and remediate that issue. And that's a standard practice that we provide. Another part that relates also back to cybersecurity is backup and disaster recovery. One of the biggest parts and challenges of cybersecurity is, again, not if, but when. And that's, you know, what do you do when you are attacked? And have you prepared enough for it that you can recover for it? Again, having been a part of a large breach, being prepared is critical. It will reduce downtime. It will enable you to support your customers and your clients and your patients, and have less of an issue with exposure of their information as well as your information. So backup and disaster recovery are a critical aspect of what we provide. And we have well over 400 customers that have those services with us. The last thing I'd say is around the big thing that we provide is upgrades like Windows 10. We all know that Windows 10, support for Windows 10 is coming to an end October 14th. And STI has worked diligently over the last couple of years with all of our customers to get their devices upgraded and supported so that they no longer have risks associated with this expiration of support by Microsoft. And we work diligently with prospective customers to identify where they need to have those upgrades completed as well. Let me say that, you know, STI we liken ourselves as your trusted advisor, trusted technology advisor. We partner with our clients to evaluate what ways to implement technical and cost efficiencies, enabling clients to focus on the core of their business as opposed to technology itself. You know, we think that it's really important that you don't have to worry about your technology solutions. We take care of those for you. With that, I'll turn it back over to Matt to walk through the action plan.
Thanks, Craig. So as we stated a little bit earlier about the importance of what you need to do next is partnering with STI, which is a cybersecurity from a standpoint of our managed service division, and conducting a cybersecurity assessment, looking at the proactive monitoring that you're doing within your practice, conducting those updates and patches, and making sure that your network is up to speed and what things are necessary. You should be implementing some kind of cybersecurity best practices solution, whether it be from a device perspective, looking at intrusion detections, encryption of your sensitive data within your network, making sure from a financial institutional standpoint and also as a healthcare requirement, you're utilizing two-factor authentication. The number two component, 68% of the people are causing the breaches. So make sure that your staff are properly trained. Educate them on phishing. In fact, conducting phishing exercises will help avoid any type of human factor interference, at least educating them more pronouncedly as to what could potentially be an attack versus something that is real. Greg explained the importance of having backups and disaster recovery plans, not just daily backups, but offsite, and making sure there's redundancies of those offsite backups, because downtime is most critical to reduce, and making sure that you've got a quick restoration protocol to get you back online. Cyber insurance, also valuable when you need it. Certainly you don't want to have to use it, but through proper conducting of an assessment on your network and making sure that you're meeting all those requirements, you want to be making sure that you've got a valid and viable cyber insurance policy that will support you through responses that are necessary, legal fees that might be incurred, and certainly compensation that could be due to the loss of any of those customers. Joe, at this time, could we ask, do we have any questions that could be posed out to us for review?
Yeah, yes, we have a couple. The first one is, you mentioned Windows 10 computers. It says we have several. Why are they a problem for security?
So the issue with Windows 10 computers from a security perspective is Microsoft will no longer provide security patches and updates after October 14th. That means anytime after October 14th that there becomes a vulnerability out there, that means that those devices will be exposed to those vulnerabilities and therefore at risk. Therefore, that's one of the key reasons to do the upgrade. Additionally, Microsoft doesn't provide support for anything break fix on those devices anymore. So if you have a failure within an application, within the desktop or server, they will no longer support it and provide any upgrades and fixes when they know that it's a Windows 10 device. Thanks, Joe.
There's another question about costs. Can you give me an idea of what it costs to do an assessment for my business?
Yeah, so from a cost perspective, one of the critical aspects of identifying costs is that we do, as I referenced earlier, as part of these assessments, we have to go in and do an inventory, and we have a better idea of what the cost would be after we walk through an inventory with your team and make sure we understand everything that needs to be evaluated. Thanks, Jeff.
Here's the third question about the cloud. This medical practice says they're on the cloud with their vendor. Why do they need to worry about cybersecurity at a local level?
So thanks, Joe. Great question. Cybersecurity is not just an issue for the applications that are run when you're on SaaS or cloud-based applications. It's also an issue for any technology running within your environment. Exposures to attacks, someone hacking into your device, someone sending you a phishing email, and through that phishing email, one of your employees clicks on the email, and that email basically gives that hacker access to all of that employee's information and any information that employee has access to within the business. That's why it's really important to have a holistic view of cybersecurity and not just singular view with the application. It's just the application itself.
That same person's asking about backup. They said that their vendor does their backup, and they noticed on the slide it says we do backup. What are we backing up if the vendor's already doing that?
Yeah, so the critical thing about backup is each organization has to determine what data they need to have backed up. And you think about it in these terms. When I think about a disaster recovery, if your business is only dependent on the vendor's backup and it doesn't back up everything in your environment, then you need a backup solution that will back up everything in your environment. So it really is a matter of what is the vendor backing up? How frequently is that data being backed up? How quickly do you need it as a business? How quickly do you need to get that data back up if you have an issue? And then do you have a secondary or an offsite copy in case something happens at the building where your systems are, that you have access to those backup? Hope that helps.
That's all the questions I see. I want to remind everybody that we're doing a series of webinars. This is the first. Our next webinar in October, we're going to have a great guest, a legal consultant who's actually a lawyer that works with healthcare IT, that's going to talk about the consequences from a legal standpoint of a cyber breach and what those costs entail, as well as talking a lot about what legal regulations are relevant to a medical practice, above and beyond just HIPAA. So there are others. So everybody will be getting an invitation to that webinar, and we hope we'll see you again. And thank you very much for attending today.